All right, good afternoon. Oh, 12:24 already. Ephraim, there's a seat up front. You sure? Just let me know when you want to ask a question. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. Yes. Just a quick update on the Secretary General. As you know, he is in Nepal on his first trip in preparation for the upcoming climate change summit, the COP28, which will be held in the United Arab Emirates later this year. This morning, he met with people from local communities in the Himalayas to hear directly from them about how they are being impacted by climate change. In a video message issued from Mount Everest, the Mount Everest region, the Secretary General noted that Nepal has lost close to 1/3 of its ice in the last 30 years. He said that glaciers are retreating, but we cannot. He stressed that we must end the fossil fuel age and we must act now to protect people on the front lines. And yesterday, the Secretary General had bilateral meetings with senior Nepalese officials, including President Paudel and Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachandra. In a joint press encounter with the Prime Minister, the Secretary General extended his deepest condolences to the families of the 10 Nepalese students killed in the terror attacks by Hamas in Israel on 7 October, and his best wishes for the safe return of Bipin Joshi, who is missing. He repeated his utter condemnation of the appalling attacks perpetrated by Hamas, stressing there's no justification ever for the killing and injuring and abduction of civilians. He said the situation in Gaza is growing more desperate by the hour, and he reiterated his appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the delivery of sustained humanitarian relief at a scale that meets the needs of people of Gaza. Tomorrow, the Secretary General will deliver a peace message from Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Buddha. He will also address a joint session of the Parliament in Kathmandu, and then he is heading, as we've told you, to London to attend the Artificial Intelligence Summit, which is being organized by the government of Great Britain. For her part, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, is in Abu Dhabi, where she delivered opening remarks at the PrepCom meeting for the upcoming COP28. She underscored that the COP28 was being convened at a critical moment in the fight against the climate crisis, and its main outcome under the global stocktake needed to respond decisively to the alarming findings of science and the existing gaps in mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. Amina Mohammed arrived in Abu Dhabi yesterday and has been engaging on a series of bilateral meetings, including with the president designate of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber, senior climate ministers from around the world, representatives of civil society, the chair of key negotiating groups, and the ministerial co-facilitator appointed by COP28 presidency to address the political issues to be resolved at the upcoming COP meeting. Turning to Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that yesterday at least 33 trucks carrying water, food, and medical supplies entered Gaza through the Rafah crossing in northern Egypt. This is the largest delivery of humanitarian aid since October 21st, when the limited delivery of humanitarian aids resumed through Rafah. While the increase is welcome, a much larger volume of aid is needed on a regular basis to prevent further deterioration of the dire humanitarian situation, including civil unrest. In particular, the entry of fuel to operate medical equipment and water and sanitation facilities is urgently required. The cumulative number of internally displaced persons since the start of the hostilities in Gaza is estimated at over 1.4 million men, women, and children. These include more than 670,000 people who are sheltering in 150 shelters run by UNRWA. And all of these shelters are way over their normal capacity. Over the weekend, in the vicinities of Shifa and Al-Quds hospitals in Gaza City and that of the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza were reportedly bombarded, causing damage. This followed renewed calls by the Israeli military authorities to evacuate these facilities. All but 13 hospitals still operational in Gaza and northern Gaza have received repeated evacuation orders in recent days. For his part, Martin Griffiths, the emergency relief coordinator, has started a visit to Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. Mr. Griffiths said he will hold discussions on how to ramp up the humanitarian response for civilians in Gaza. Going back to Saturday, UNRWA reported that thousands of people broke into several UNRWA warehouses and distribution centers in Gaza, taking flour, hygiene supplies, and other items. UNRWA's operations director, Tom White, said this is a worrying sign that civil order is starting to break down after 3 weeks of war and a tight siege on Gaza. For its part, the World Health Organization called on all parties to the conflict to protect civilian and civilian infrastructures, and saying the obvious, that it is impossible to evacuate patients without endangering lives from the hospitals. The Security Council will hear more about, and yourselves will hear more about this humanitarian situation in Gaza this afternoon when the Security Council meets. The council members will be briefed by the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, and a Senior Director from OCHA, Lisa Doughton. We will get you those remarks before they are delivered. At least we'll try to do so. Meanwhile, back here, the Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, briefed the Security Council members on the situation in Syria. He warned that the Syrian people are facing terrifying prospects of a potential wider escalation, given the alarming developments in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. He sounded the alarm that the situation is now at its most dangerous for a long time and called for an immediate de-escalation while advancing the political process. Also addressing Security Council members was Edem Wosornu, the Director of Operations and Advocacy at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. She said that several areas across the northern Syria experienced a serious escalation in hostilities. This had deep impact on the humanitarian workers and operations, particularly in the northwest of the country. 3 aid workers were among those killed, and many organizations are forced to temporarily suspend their operations. Hostilities have also damaged critical services and infrastructure, including more than 40 health facilities, 24 schools, and some 20 water system plants. Temporarily affected also main power stations at Idlib. 10 months into this year, Ms. Wosornu said Syrian humanitarian response plan is less than 30% funded. And without additional funding, OCHA fears that many people will go without the support they need to get through the harsh winter months. And we've seen how harsh the winters in Syria can be. Turning to Lebanon, exchanges of fire across the blue line are continuing through the weekend, with 2 peacekeepers injured on October 28th due to shelling that impacted 2 UNIFIL positions in the sector east. UNIFIL is working to ascertain the origins of the shell fire. Among another UNIFIL compound was also hit by shelling on the same day, causing minor property damage. UNIFIL personnel repeatedly sheltered in bunkers over the weekend. While UNIFIL premises have been impacted on several occasions since October 8th, the incident on the 28th were the first time that UNIFIL peacekeepers have been injured during the ongoing breaches of the cessation of hostilities along the Blue Line. We remind the parties of their obligations to ensure the safety and security of peacekeepers and the inviolability of UN premises. And again, we urge all actors to immediately cease hostile actions across the Blue Line. Moving to staying on peacekeeping, but this time in the Congo, the UN peacekeeping mission in that country, otherwise known as MONUSCO, said they're concerned about clashes between members of the M23 militia, the Congolese armed forces, and a coalition of armed groups that have been occurring daily since the beginning of October in the province of North Kivu. These clashes taking place in Masisi, Rutshuru, and Nyarongogo territories represent a serious escalation of the conflict in eastern Congo. There's also a serious threat to humanitarian relief operations and to the sites hosting hosting displaced people in the periphery of Goma. Peacekeepers deployed a quick reaction force to Rutshuru to protect civilians, working closely with the Congolese Armed Forces and the East African Community Regional Force. UN peacekeepers continue to conduct patrols to protect Goma. They've also established security perimeters around humanitarian aid distribution centers in Kinshasa base and escorted the delivery of non-food items and other humanitarian assistance in the areas where approximately 25,000 internally displaced people are seeking protection around the mission's base. Also, I've been asked by some of you about the talks that are going on in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia regarding Sudan and whether we're involved in those talks. I can tell you that our colleagues at OCHA have a team in Jeddah to facilitate the humanitarian track of these critical negotiations. More than 6 months since the start of the current hostilities, we and our partners have reached more than 3.5 million people with humanitarian assistance, but that's only 20% of the people we've aimed to help. The number of people who need humanitarian assistance in Sudan has increased from an estimated 15.8 million people in November of last year to 24.7 million people in May, representing a 57% increase. In a statement issued over the weekend, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, said the Sudanese armed forces and rapid support forces must fully adhere to international humanitarian law and ensure safe and sustained and unhindered access to people in need, including by breaking through the bureaucratic logjam. And an update from a humanitarian crisis that we don't want to overlook, which is taking place just a few hours flight south of here. Quick update from Haiti. The World Food Program tells us that since mid-August, violence in Port-au-Prince has forced about 40,000 people to flee from their homes. These recent movements bring the total number of displaced people across the country to 200,000. In the Haitian capital, displaced people have taken shelter in over 90 different locations, including schools, churches, and abandoned buildings. WFP has set up 3 central kitchens in the capital where each day as many as 22,000 meals are prepared and then transported to various sites where displaced people are staying. The food agency is in the process of shifting from serving hot meals to providing cash assistance to displaced people. However, and we often talk about what underfunding means for people, funding cut means that WFP has been unable to deliver continuous assistance to all those in need and is urgently calling for $136 million to reach the most vulnerable Haitians over the next 6 months. I have been asked about the situation in Bangladesh, and I can tell you that the Secretary General is concerned about reports of violence at political rallies in Bangladesh in which at least 9 people have died and numerous people have been injured. He calls on all parties to refrain from violence or any excessive use of force or arbitrary detention. He also stresses the need to respect for the right of freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. A couple of senior personnel appointments, then you get to ask me some questions. Today, the Secretary General is appointing Marcos Atias Neto of Brazil as the new Assistant Administrator and Director of the Bureau for Policy Program Services at UNDP. He succeeds Hao Xiong-Shu of China, who has been recently appointed as the Undersecretary General Deputy Administrator of UNDP. Mr. Neto is currently the Director of UNDP's Sustainable Finance Hub, and we congratulate him on his appointment. And today, the Secretary General also appointed Kirsi Madi of Finland as Deputy Executive Director for Resource Management, Sustainability, and Partnerships at UN Women. The Secretary General extends his appreciation to UN Women, his predecessor, Moaz Doraid of Egypt, who will continue to serve as UN Women Deputy Executive Director ad interim until Ms. Madi assumes her functions. Currently serving as Director of the Executive Director's Office and Chief of Staff at UNICEF, Ms. Madi brings over 30 years of experience. We congratulate her. Tomorrow I will have a guest, and that will be Epsi Campbell-Barr, Chairperson of the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, and Jules Justin Hansford, a member of the forum. They will be here to brief you following the first presentation of annual reports of the General Assembly. And on a much lighter note, I think we all need to congratulate the South African Springboks for their win in a Rugby World Cup, which was wonderfully hosted by the French. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of questions related to the Israeli-Hamas conflict. First, does the Secretary General have any comment on the entry of Israeli tanks into Gaza and its order specifically for Al-Quds Hospital to evacuate when it has people on ventilator and newborns in incubators, and on the Israeli statement that this evacuation order is allowed under the Geneva Conventions because self-defense can include hospitals when they claim that the headquarters of Hamas is under the hospital. Thank you.
Okay, let me try to take some of those things backwards. I think on the evacuation of hospitals, the Secretary General, I think, is in full agreement with Dr. Tedros when he said it is impossible to evacuate hospitals in a conflict zone without endangering the lives of those patients, and that hospitals need to be protected under international law. As far as the ground incursion, I would refer you to the statement we issued over the weekend from the Secretary General, which I think refers to that. We continue to work and to call for a humanitarian ceasefire, to call for greater humanitarian access. I mean, we did see a larger number of trucks going in, but it remains a drop in the bucket, and we continue to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages.
And one follow-up question related to the hostages. Hamas put out a video today of several hostages. Does the Secretary General have any comment on the release of that video and what it said?
No, I haven't seen. I won't comment because I have not seen the video. I mean, video, no video. These people need to be released. Maggie.
Steph, you said 33 trucks yesterday. It's already pushing 7 p.m. in the region Monday. Anything on Monday?
We will know when Monday ends.
And just to be crystal clear, no fuel whatsoever
Correct.
was on those?
Correct.
Okay, and then on Mr. Griffith's meetings in Israel and the occupied territories, where is he planning to go? I mean, obviously Gaza is kind of a no-go zone, but the West Bank is also seeing a real escalation in violence. So with whom is he going to meet and where?
My understanding is that he will most likely go to the West Bank and meet with representatives of the Palestinian Authority. Today, I know Mr. Griffiths and Mr. Venislan both met with President Herzog as well as other Israeli officials. Ibtisam, then Daji, then Pam.
For a follow-up on Mr. Griffith's visit to Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, is he planning to go also to the Gaza Strip? And if not, why not?
We will update his travels as they become clear.
But did he ask the Israelis to allow him to go there?
As I said, we will update his travels as they become clear.
Okay, so then on the, I asked you, I think last week, about that Israelis are, after the October 7th, they're revoked the working permission of Palestinian workers from Gaza immediately, And there, according to local media reports, including Israeli media reports, there's at least 4,000 Palestinian workers who are held in detention centers, and there's also reports about human rights violations. So do you have any updates on that?
Go through a process or need to be released. I'm still trying to, I don't know why it's so complicated, but trying to get some details about those particular workers.
And on regarding the settlers' attacks increased more even than a week before or 2 weeks before. There's 2 Palestinians who were killed during the weekend, some injuries, they attack farmers, etc. Is Mr. Griffiths planning to visit any of these families or farmers who are attacked by
I don't know
settlers?
what he's planning, but I can tell, and I will let you know if he does, but I can tell you that the Secretary General strongly condemns the acts of violence we have seen by settlers in the occupied Palestinian territory, including, I think, the most recent deadly shooting, which took place, I think, yesterday. On the 28th, of someone who was just harvesting his olives with his family. Not only condemn these attacks, but also they have a risk of greatly inflaming an already very volatile situation in the West Bank. And Israel must ensure that civilians are protected and perpetrators held to account. And we call on all to act responsibly. Deji, then Pam.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Steph, you got something dropped there, I think. What's that? Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay,
thanks.
anyway. So I got a couple questions also concerning the situation in Gaza. Last week, you mentioned that the SG is trying to expand, to increase the volume of humanitarian aid from Rafah border crossing. How's the work now? We saw some increase, but it's not enough, just like you said.
I think you answered the question. It's not
Yeah,
enough.
but it's still but the SG is still in the negotiation with parties.
I mean,
what's the update?
let me just put it. Let me put it in simple terms. We're not holding back, right? So it's not enough.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Okay, so also last week on Friday, I think I asked you about the negotiation which broke in Doha, and the next day, the SG was in Doha. So the UN has been involved in that negotiation. Can you share us more information since
No.
you have already posted?
No, I mean, it's no secret the Secretary General wanted to stop over in Doha on his way to Nepal. He met with the Prime Minister. While there, obviously, he thanked the Prime Minister and through him the Emir for all the assistance, especially on the issue of the release of hostages. Those discussions are ongoing. I think you would understand that I'm not going to provide you more details, not to jeopardize anything.
Okay, last Friday also on the General Assembly vote, after that, the explanation by the Israeli ambassador, he said there's no humanitarian crisis in accordance with the international humanitarian law. That's basically what's against what you've mentioned in your opening remarks.
Well, you can. That's your job. You do the compare and contrast. I come here every day. I tell you what's going on. I think in pretty bleak and stark terms. The Israeli ambassador said what he said.
But from the UN
but
perspective,
compared, I mean,
there is a humanitarian crisis.
you have been listening to what I mean, and I don't mean it rhetorically. I know you've been listening to what I've been saying, so I think
I think
you're drawing the right
Yeah,
conclusions.
okay.
Pam, then Gabriel.
A little more straightforward. Martin Griffiths said today that he met with some of the Israeli hostage families. Can you say which ones and
No, I
what-
don't.
any readout?
Let's see what else we can get from OCHA.
And it was an Israeli diplomat who said that Griffiths was not given a visa for Gaza. Is that correct? And
Who said what? Sorry.
that Martin Griffiths was denied a visa for Gaza.
I'm not.
Let
I'm
me
not
just
sure
ask
people.
it
I'm not.
directly. Has Martin Griffiths been denied a visa from the Israelis
I'm not sure.
to
I
go
think you have to
Gaza?
check. I mean, I'm not sure. Let me just tell you that Martin Griffiths is in Israel.
Right,
He got a visa to go to Israel,
right.
right?
Right.
Any other further travel, I will share with you.
Okay, and as far as you know, you can't speak to the fact that he may have been denied the ability to go to to Gaza by...
As I said, I will update you on travel
Okay.
as it happens.
All right, thank you.
Gabriel, yes, please.
Hi, thank you, Steph. I know the Secretary General's been very clear since this conflict began about the protection of journalists during this conflict, but I have a follow-up on that. Yuma al-Said, a Al Jazeera reporter in Gaza City, within the last few hours has received a phone call saying that she and her family need to leave their home or else they'll be in grave danger, facing potential death. My question is, as the Israeli military begins this incursion into Gaza City, what is the Secretary General's message to the journalists that remain in Gaza City reporting on the conflict?
I think first it's a badge of honor that in the midst of conflict, your colleagues of not just Al Jazeera but others that remain to tell the story. It's a mark of immense courage, and we need to make sure that they remain safe and they remain protected. Yvonne, and then. Yeah, go ahead, Yvonne.
Okay, so the first question on UNIFIL, you said they're working to ascertain the responsibility for the mortar shell attacks, but what form will that investigation take? How long will it take? And will they actually share the information when they have some? Or is there a concern about exacerbating tensions by releasing that information?
I think tensions, let me just put it this way, UNIFIL is not making tensions worse. We're trying to calm tensions. As soon as they have something, I will be able to share with you.
Okay, but they don't know who did it.
No,
at
that's the point. They're
moment.
trying to ascertain
Okay.
where it came from.
All right. One other question on Martin Griffiths. Given the context of last week and how angry the Israeli mission was with the United Nations, with the Secretary General, what kind of reception is he receiving in Israel? And are there any meetings that he's requested that he's been denied?
I'm not aware of him having been denied meetings he's requested. He, along with Tor, have continuously, since the beginning of this current crisis, have continued to have meetings with Israeli counterparts where we continue to advocate for the things we've been advocating for publicly. Celia.
Steph, each time there is a war in the world, the Secretary General is deeply concerned. But nothing happened, that the war are still raging. Is the UN relevant?
Celia, I think if we put ourselves in the shoes of people who rely on the UN to be fed, to be housed, to be taken care of in time of conflict, I think the answer would be yes. Despite all of the political schisms that we see increasing within the membership of the organization, UN staff, humanitarian workers, peacekeepers continue to serve on the front lines to help people, to ensure that they survive to the next day. The long-term political solutions need to come from united action from the member states. My short answer to you is yes. Sir.
Serhiy Barbuti, Channel 5. In the Russian city of Makhachkala, hundreds of people stormed the airport because of a flight from Israel. And the police didn't stop them. So will the UN condemn this act of anti-Semitism? Thank you.
Look, two things. My understanding is that the security forces and the government have put things, have restored order, but we condemn unconditionally the actions and the words of those people who tried to storm the airport, who try to hunt down people just because of their religion, and we condemn those acts of anti-Semitism without reserve. Stefano, and then we'll come back to round two, and then I think I'll go to the screen unless...
Thank you, Stéphane. Two questions. One on, for about 36 hours in Gaza, there was no internet, there was no cellular, there was nothing when the Israeli came in. Now, is this, I mean, is this important to understand what happened? Because it could be a crime to all of a sudden, I don't know, ambulance cannot respond to a call.
I mean, obviously, communications is critical, right? The communications have now been restored. We are exploring various solutions to make our systems more resilient. I mean, the lack of communication is, of course, very bad for us because we lose contact with our staff. And I think whether it was UNRWA, World Food Program, UNICEF, and others, lost contact with their staff for quite some time. And it's, of course, critical for us to be able to have communications and contact with the people that we're there to serve.
No, I'm sorry. I understand that it's important, but just my question is this considered something that is like a crime, something that international law?
I'm not going to get into.
Okay, then I have another question on. You told me before that the Secretary General didn't have contact with the government. I mean, with Netanyahu government, but he had contact with the President of Israel, Herzog. He on October 12th, the President of Israel said it is an entire nation how that he's responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not being aware, not involved. This was on October 12th. When the Secretary General spoke with President Herzog, did you have an impression that the President of Israel thought that all the Palestinians in Gaza were responsible for the October 7 attack?
I can't speak to every conversation that they've had. I know they've been in touch quite a bit. They also have a long-standing relationship, and they're continuing to stay in contact. Meanwhile, Tor and others are, I think today, met with the National Security Advisor of the Prime Minister. So, I mean, the contacts are being had. Alan.
Thank you, Stéphane. Just minutes ago, the representative of the Israeli army in Geneva, during the briefing in Geneva, said that they will not allow...
The representatives of, sorry?
Of Israeli army in Geneva. He said that they will not allow to deliver fuel to Gaza Strip because they're not obliged by anything, any comments regarding that.
I don't really understand. I'm not sure I understand the question now. But if it just happened a few minutes ago, I'm happy to look into it. But
I can repeat it. If
you could try, but I may
still.
I may try.
Explain it. Yeah. I mean, he stated literally that Israel will not allow to deliver the fuel.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen that statement. What I can tell you is that we desperately need fuel for UN operations to run the health centers that we operate, to get fresh water so WFP-sponsored bakeries can work and so people can drink. The fuel is needed. Okay, let me go to the screen. Benno and then Lenka.
Thank you, Steph. It's a very loud environment. I hope you can hear me. My question is very easy, though. Joe Biden insinuated that he can't really trust the Gaza death toll because of it's coming from the Gaza health authorities. Does the SG trust these numbers? If yes, why?
Benno, I think that the question in a different form was asked last week, but I'll repeat basically what I said, which is that we are very clear when we talk about the death toll in Gaza, we're very clear about the source of those figures, and those come from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. We do not take them as our own. We state where they come from. That being said, we've been through conflicts in Gaza before. We have found to be the figures issued, the death toll figures issued by the Ministry of Health in Gaza to be reliable and to be close to being on target, if I may use if I may use that that word. So we've had no particular issues with that data. Lenka.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. So 2 questions, please, if I may. Follow up on the internet issue. Elon Musk said over the weekend that he would be willing to connect communications of UN agencies. Has there been any contacts with him on this note?
Yes, I know there has been some contact, and I also know that our colleagues who deal with the issue of telecommunications are in touch with various entities and governments and stakeholders to try to ensure the connectivity between the UN offices around the world and our colleagues in Gaza is resilient, as given its life-saving need for such communications. Your second question.
Is the SG going to speak? Is the SG going to speak with him?
No, I don't think this is an issue where the SG needs to speak to Elon Musk. I know they've been contacts with Starlink. Mushfiq.
And
Sorry.
Second question. Thank you. So the new U.S. Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday sent a message to the United Nations saying, quote, there will be a ceasefire only when Hamas ceases to be a threat to Israel, end of quote. And he sent it to the UN. I was wondering if you contacted him and what's your message back?
No, I mean, I haven't seen that particular message. It's not that we're going to send a message back. Our message, you know, the Secretary General can be criticized for what he says, and people have, and others have supported him, but he's been very consistent in calling for the same things wherever he is, and he will continue to do that, as well as all of his senior officials.
Thank you.
Mushfiq.
Thank you, Stéphane, for your statement on Bangladesh. The violence unleashed by the police and the ruling party of Bangladesh on October 28 to foil the main opposition, PNP Grande. The police still arrested. They arrested main opposition.
So, Mushfiq, Mushfiq, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I know what happened. What is your question, sir?
So my question, how could you believe that there can be an election which will be free, fair, and inclusive, because government is attacking the opposition and arresting all rank and file and their family members?
I mean, we're obviously concerned, as I said, by the violence. We still think that it is important that there be calm and respect for all people's freedom to express themselves in advance of the elections. But I don't think anyone wants to prejudge the elections. Madam. No, go ahead.
Thank you, Steph. You mentioned in the introduction of your speech that the Shifa, Al-Quds, and the Indonesian hospitals were hit in northern Gaza, and there are news right now that just arrived that the Turkish Palestinian Friendship Hospital was also hit. What is the Secretary General's reaction to the bombardment of hospitals?
I mean, he's against it. Hospitals need to be protected. Hospitals cannot be used for combat, and those people who are inside need to be safe. Edie, and then Gabriel, and then I think we'll stop.
Thank you, Steph. Following up on his meetings in Gaza, has the Secretary General been in contact with other leaders? Will he be? And where, after his visit to Nepal, which I believe ends tomorrow, where's he going?
He will be in London for the Artificial Intelligence Summit that was convened by Prime Minister Sunak. He will be at work in the office on Friday. He spoke to President Sisi of Egypt over the weekend, and of course he remains in touch with all of his senior officials, and he's with his phone all the time. Gabriel.
Thanks. I'll make this quick. Thanks for allowing me to do a follow-up. Just on language, ceasefire, humanitarian pause, and truce. A lot of people are talking about what's the difference. I'm not asking you to give it what's the difference, but can you, from the Secretary General's standpoint, please explain his views on these three?
Well, listen, his view on a humanitarian ceasefire is a ceasefire with humanitarian purposes. You're right, there's a lot of debate and different language being used. Ultimately, what we want to see is we want to see a situation where it is safe for humanitarian workers to deliver life-saving aid. It is safe for people to receive that aid, and that's what we're working towards. Thank you all. I wish you a good day.